And that's why I said no. I'm just kidding. Welcome, everyone, to the 10K Rum Podcast. My name is Amos Joseph. I'm joined by my co-host, Brook Potter, who's in the UK. How's it going, Brook?
Doing well. I'm trying to tell this Russian bitch to stop talking to me. I'm going into the show and she's not listening. So anybody out there who's into simping and really, trying to impress some lady just because she's hot with your money, my Russian friend is looking for $1,000 US. I told her to donate a kidney. She doesn't really want to do prostitution because the ruble is too low. It might take too long, and she really doesn't have the time to do an OnlyFans. So any simps out there that want to send money to a Russian broad, get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to forward the information. Beyond that, I was good. Last night I did a show on Honey Badger Radio, the Fireside Chat with Brian, who's one of the co-hosts of the Honey Badgers. Plug the show. Hopefully we'll get some good downloads and we'll get some stuff. Last I checked, at least 200 people have actually seen it. And we also did a Patreon exclusive where, somebody came on and we had a little talk about pop culture, Wonder Woman 1984 and so forth. So anybody looking for that, I've linked it on my channel. And hopefully we'll get some good responses. How are you doing, Amos? How are things out in the great frosty? You're basically in Canada, right? So you're in the Arctic Circle at this point.
Some parts around here are as cold as Antarctica right now.
Fucking hell. How crazy is that? What is wrong with you people?
So, for everyone who doesn't know, there's what's called a polar vortex. Typically happens once a year at least, where some cold air from Canada just takes a wrong turn somewhere in the middle and just this big old swash right down the middle of the country. It's pretty much from Minnesota all the way out to Montana, then all the way out to the East Coast, and then of course all the way down to Texas, which we'll talk about what happened there with that.
Yes.
It got so cold that Texas saw snow.
Texas does get snow rarely. Even when I was there in San Antonio, they had very little bit, not even like an inch. But
I've seen some pictures that are like a good couple inches.
Yeah, that's probably more than there. But they get like a frosting. They get like a little,
they get a frosting, but this time it's like full on snow.
Yeah. So poor country has no idea how to handle it. You're probably up there like pathetic.
Yeah, someone was saying like for the next couple of days, if you're down south, do not drive unless you absolutely have to. For those of you up north, just wear a coat.
Yeah, just life goes on.
Yeah, because we're fairly unique. I remember telling you when I was when I went out to Ohio years ago to meet up with someone. We were I had to drive their vehicle. Well, any time I've gone anywhere else besides, outside of the immediate states around here, and there's snow or some sort of frost, I'm the one that has to drive because I'm the one that knows how to handle it.
Good. I mean, I do not know how to handle snow and ice. I admit that openly. Coming from the Caribbean, of course, snow, like what the fuck is that?
Yeah, so and even like driving with chains on your wheels and stuff.
Yeah,
never had to do that. And places that I've gone to that are like, hey, you're renting a car from us. Do you want to rent chains? And I'm like, no. You sure?
That's impressive.
And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, and then this is the wedding that I went to out in the Northwest few years ago. You remember that? I went out to the wedding, and all the groomsmen that were with me were like, yeah, we're gonna let him drive. He's from Minnesota.
No, that's very impressive. I mean,
we're going 30, 40 miles an hour on icy roads, and
no problem,
just
holding on for dear life.
And I'm just like, I'm just having a chat with him. I'm just driving.
It's like an episode of Ice Truckers and shit like that, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to it because obviously I have no experience with ice and stuff like that. A friend of mine very recently from Essex, where I was, he got into a little bit of a tussle, and he skid off and he hit a car and stuff like that. So The English aren't, they don't get yours kind of snow. So
yeah,
it is going to be challenging.
Yeah. So, anyways, real quick before we get into the rest of the stuff.
Yes. Wash your balls. Wash those balls, guys. And preferably with tactical soap.
Yes. Go to tacticalsoap.com, use coupon code 10K Rum to get 10% off. A little bit of that goes to us. And also, if you want to support the show in any other ways, you can support the show on a monthly basis for as little as $1 a month. Over at Subscribestar at subscribestar.com/shitler-preachers, where you can basically just put out, check out our content for $5. You can, of course, get into our raw takes where we have a catalog of videos where we've talked about different stories, different things that we can't really talk about on the show. So
yes,
do check that out, and we thank everyone for supporting the show.
Also, we are available on all major podcasting platforms.
Yes.
And if you can't do any of the above, hey, add us to your download list. It definitely helps with the numbers, and share us with a friend or family who might be interested in the content, guys. We're coming up on a time period where we got to make some choices about the show. We would really appreciate your help in growing the show out.
So, anyways, what do we want to touch on? Since we're talking about the weather.
The weather. Do we talk about the weather? That's so English.
I think we'll start with that.
It's British, actually.
It's very Minnesotan too.
Oh, is it? Is it like how is to discuss the weather? Oh, it's shit. Oh yeah, it's totally shit. That kind of thing.
No. It's like, yeah, it's like you get together, you're like, yeah. You look outside, man, it's cold out there. Yeah, here it's supposed to get worse tomorrow, or it's supposed to get better. Or we're going to get sunshine next week, or, it's going to rain, or, the plows are coming out. And there's a whole
There's a culture.
It's a culture, yeah.
Right, it's almost like a secret language that Minnesotans speak. And if y'all both predict the weather correctly, like, do y'all hook up? Is that how matchmaking is done in Minnesota?
Exactly. I mean, it's a conversation piece between family, between strangers, between everyone. Yeah. I'll go to a family gathering and then I walk in on like, yeah, here they say we're supposed to get like 12 inches of snow next month or something, and it's just like, yep, you're in a Minnesota household. Like, people are talking about the weather.
It's a very British thing too, but it's more the rain. We don't get as much snow. We get rain.
Someone said we got it from the Scandinavian culture.
Probably, yes. The Norwegians definitely, because y'all are settled by the Swedes and the Norwegians, right? Minnesota.
We say Scandinavian. It's like it's a mixture.
Well, it's Finland, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, and technically Greenland as well.
Yeah, it's a combination of all of those, it's all mixed in there. So that some people have like some Norwegians and what else? And some of them I've heard will ask Minnesotans, like, whatever accent they have, do you guys talk about the weather? We're like,
yeah.
It's actually interesting when you see like Norwegian flags and stuff flying around in Minnesota. You'll see an American flag, you'll see a Norway flag, and then you'll see the Minnesota flag, which is really rare. Minnesota flag is really rare.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Yeah, I think when I was there, I think you were telling me about the Norwegians that settled there. And I mean, let's it's some good breeding, man. Some of the girls in Minnesota look pretty damn fine, man. They could rival some of the Swedes and shit. So you're definitely in a good place. And it's ironic. They could have gone anywhere in the country. They could have gone to Florida, Texas, California with the beaches. No, they went and found the fucking, Canada light. They went and found like Norway light in Minnesota. It's kind of bizarre.
Most miserable state in the winter.
It is the coldest in the U.S. Right?
That's not necessarily mean if it's the coldest. So there was
between you and Alaska.
No. There was a survey. There was a survey done.
Yeah.
That said, what states have the most miserable winters?
Yeah.
Alaska wasn't really even in top 5.
Oh, really? So
Alaska
you'll
gets
crack the 10-5?
We were number 1.
Oh, you're number 1. Go team.
It was like Wisconsin, Michigan with us. I think the Dakotas,
Right.
like states around here because of similar climates.
Right.
Alaska was maybe just barely in top 10. Because
Interesting.
the thing with Alaska is they get that warm current.
Yeah, it does warm up a little bit more.
Yeah,
and they're out in the ocean.
Yeah, so and of course their population centers are around the coasts.
Yeah, very
where they
south.
get the warm current. So they're not so the majority of the people are just thinking, oh, it's just they have mild winters compared to Minnesota.
Yeah, it's all the lakes, right? The lakes are the heat sinks of the country, and all the heat just goes into the lakes, and y'all freeze your balls off. So
yeah,
you're number 1. Good for you. but you know who's not number 1? Texas, when it comes to handling the cold. And Texas is having a pretty hard time. I don't know if you've seen.
I mean, along the South, every time they get some snow or some frost, I've heard like some states when they get like an inch of snow, they shut down the state.
Yeah. Washington D.C. is like that as well. I was there for that.
Schools shut down, businesses close up, because people don't go to work because the lack of experience of driving in the snow is it's such a big gap that the state would rather not risk so many accidents.
Correct.
And then you just got like the visiting Northerners that are just like driving around enjoying no traffic.
The snowbirds.
The snowbirds.
The snowbirds. They come down from the north.
But yeah, we were talking about how like their windmill, the wind turbines.
The wind turbines and the solar panels that they had out there
have all frozen.
Have all frozen. And
a lot of them have frozen at least.
Yes. And it's actually causing some problems to the power grid. And I think somebody fact check me on this. They're having some blackouts as a result of the cold weather. Yeah. So much for this green revolution.
We talked about this like wind is just
wind is pure virtue signaling.
Yeah, it's a virtue signal. Like having wind turbines in your state is literally just like jerking off into the wind. Like, look at me.
Yeah, pretty much.
And whereas solar panels, we've talked about how like it's just there's a lot that could be improved on it to actually make it effective. But for solar panels to freeze up in Texas is a rare thing in itself.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to freeze up. It's just covered in snow. So obviously it's not getting as much light and other things like that. Look, I'm not opposed to, people putting solar panels on their roof and, if they have like a Tesla battery pack and they could kind of offset things. But yeah, sure, go ahead. But it's very obvious you cannot run an industrial civilization off of green power. It just, everybody who's kind of claiming that and they're getting rid of, let's get rid of the coal and the natural gas and nuclear and all these things. It's a pipe dream. I can't remember the guys that did it, but one of the Greenpeace guys actually came out in favor of nuclear power. Like he did a whole study on solar panels.
Nuclear power is definitely a lot. Well, it's technically where we're supposed to be. We should be using nuclear power almost exclusively at this point.
Yeah, I would agree. France, for instance, I think 70% of their power comes from nuclear power, and they have the cheapest energy in all of Europe. While out here in the UK, bumbling Boris Johnson is talking about we have to be the Saudi Arabia of wind turbines. And it's kind of like this is so ridiculous. That's just going to send the energy prices through the roof. To appear, just to appease the greenies. So yeah, it's a failed proposition that even some radical leftists like Michael Moore. Did you see his movie Planet of the Humans?
No.
Okay, so he actually did an expose on green power. And, all of the environmentalists are like, oh, yeah, we need biomass and wind turbines and this, that, and the other. And Michael Moore is a progressive. He's like as far left, practically a communist. And even he admitted that it doesn't work. The technology just does not exist. Of course, his solution is to depopulate the earth. There's no mention of nuclear power in that. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, with solar panels, though, I mean, you could do something. There is a better way of doing it. I think,
you can do it, but you're not going to run an industrial anything off of that.
There was this one video that talked about how if we like in the deserts. So if we set up if we just took over, I think they said in Arizona.
Yeah, like Mojave.
Yeah, if we just took over literal hundreds of square miles of space and just lined them with solar panels. The only problem with solar panels right now is just battery storage.
No. There are environmental impact that comes from putting solar panels in the Mojave Desert. Remember, the Mojave Desert is an ecosystem. So they did this. They put two massive it wasn't solar in that respect, but it was like a directed sunbeam on like a tower to heat water. But it's a massive it's a massive mirror field and stuff like that. Built, I think, in the late 90s, possibly early 2000s, might be wrong, and it's basically abandoned. Right? All of the mirrors have broken, everything else. And because the solar panels are covering the ground, nothing can live there. So all of the turtles and gophers and cactus and, everything that makes the desert gone. And now the ground is so compacted and dry, nothing can grow there again. So it's literally destroyed the ecosystem of the desert.
So you'd have to do it in space.
Space actually makes sense to do it. That would be a good thing, but there are better ways to do it. Like the Earth itself has a magnetic field, so you could actually just run very, very long wires through through space, and that in and of itself will generate power. You don't even need a solar panel.
Oh, you're talking the
almost like a Dyson sphere and these other types of things.
Oh, running solar panels in a ring.
You could do it, but just running metal through the stratosphere.
Electric EM induction.
Yeah, induction. So it would be because the Earth is a magnet, it's magnetic. Yeah. You could run. They did it, and actually it overheated the power system that NASA was testing that blew up.
Because I know, we learned this. Like, if you took a bundle of extension cords, and you had a little voltmeter on one end, and you did some jump rope with it, it'll pick up a current.
Yeah, very slight. Yeah, but it would. Yeah. It would. So, I mean, there are things that it's good. Solar power is good for. If you're living off the grid, obviously, and you got batteries, sure. But as even Elon Musk is kind of admitting this, that there is not enough lithium ion on the planet to replace all the cars that we have on the road, for instance. Far less. Like if you took every battery on the entire country and you put it into a battery bank to store solar power, you can run the United States of America for about 2 hours or something along those lines. We're not there. We do not have the storage technology to really do that. And there are a lot of people working on it. But anyways, in the meantime, we got rolling blackouts in Texas. So it's we can't wait.
What we got to do
is
put mini nuclear reactors in cars.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what the Army does. The U.S. Army, they've downsized the nuclear reactors to put it in aircraft carriers and other things. So would you drive around with a reactor in your trunk? The flux capacitor? What's going on, Mr. Flux?
1.21 gigawatts.
Gigawatts.
I mean, I actually found this. I gotta look it up again. It was a certain word for it. The Army, well, not the Army, the military had a project.
Yes.
For a massive, I don't know if the term would be jumbo jet. It was a giant fighter jet that would run off nuclear power. It could stay in the air for 2 months at a time.
Interesting. Yeah. I suppose that the problem with nuclear power is all the shielding is very heavy, which is why it doesn't work on smaller vessels. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that. That's probably something out of the 50s or the 60s, because nuclear power was kind of seen as the saving grace of, the modern world.
Let's see. Airship. No. There was a word for it. They had a specific
I mean, whoever cracks electric planes, I think they might do pretty well. But it's the same problem. The weight of the batteries, it's not conducive to air flight and stuff like that. So there's a lot of potential for it.
Yeah. So because that'd be insane. But I mean, I've even seen like there's talk like we could definitely create nuclear powered ships to go to Mars.
Yeah.
So what you would do is you would launch a rocket like you normally would. You would get it to Mars like you normally would. But instead you would have a modular nuclear reactor that could last 30 years.
Yeah.
You bring some basic components. You have to like create a way to like recycle the air. But like the power would just solve so many problems, because currently with the way like when NASA sends stuff over to Mars, it's all solar powered.
Yeah. Or fuel, or was it fuel cells if it's like
there's maybe some nuclear fuel cells, like they'll just have like
hydrogen fuel cells to produce water and other things.
Wasn't there? Well, maybe that was just because we watched that movie. There's a movie, The Martian, where he said there was like a nuclear core with one of those devices.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's a good movie, actually. Yeah.
I don't know if that was based on any real ships, but there's that. But then basically what they're saying is like you send people there with a core that can produce you basically all the power you need for 30 years. And all you have to do is every 20 so years, send a new core over.
I mean, that is what GE and Westinghouse, are actually working on right now, is modular small nuclear reactors. And the pilot project is in the UK. So I fully support that. Every little town has their own reactor buried underground. It's enough to power the town, kind of thing. Yeah. And there's a backup system. When one fails, they just come in, pull it out, put in another one, and they take it back to the plant for reprocessing. So big fan. And when it comes to nuclear, I completely agree with you. We should have been doing this years ago, but the politics of the greenies keeping that from happening.
I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson, even, as I guess some people might consider him pretty left-leaning in some of the things, because he definitely gets into that. But I remember one time when he was talking about, like, if the aliens showed up, like, how are we going to explain to them how we're using energy? Yeah, we burn this thing out of the ground, and that's all we do. He's like, wait, but you have the technology to like collide atoms and stuff to create massive amounts of energy for cheap, and you're still using this dead animal stuff.
yeah, petroleum products, leftover dinosaurs.
yeah. And he goes, yeah, you can do stuff with your solar panel, but really, wind turbines?
yeah. And the ironic thing is, all of that nuclear technology is just there to boil water. We're still using the turbine system that Tesla built to generate power,
which is powerful as it is.
Oh yeah, completely agree. Completely. I'm not saying no, but it's ironic. We have this ridiculously advanced technology to boil water. It's kind of ironic in a sense, but
we'd have to figure out a way to convert thermal energy directly, like, because even your geothermal like systems and stuff, boiling water,
everything everything turns a turbine. That's still how we generate all our power. We don't have a system like there was a very fascinating talk that came out of MIT, and I don't know if you saw the Tim Cast podcast where they brought on the alien scientists.
No.
Oh, dude, that's a very fun episode. But they talked about like all the different research that's going into generating energy, including cold fusion, where there is a method of room temperature fusion that takes place with a particular packed matrix of metals and stuff like that. And it's fantastic. It's a great way of, seeing fusion take place, but they can't figure out how to make that boil water. It's a great reaction.
Because
even how do we turn it into power?
Yeah. In Star Trek, they don't boil water.
No, it's a dilithium crystal.
Well, what happens is like the energy just goes direct. Like they funnel the energy to go into just power relays, and everything powers up that way. And it's like they found a way to make it directly useful instead of like.
Yeah.
Could you imagine a starship with just a giant turbine broiling water?
Yeah. That's where we are at. We're still
warp
at
drive,
that stage.
steam shooting out the edges.
That is a very good podcast. If you don't want to look at the politics and you want to hear some of the crazy conspiracies and I would recommend that. And he's got a YouTube channel, the alien, I think the Alien Scientist or something like that.
But okay, what let's see. There was another one we were going to get into.
I mean, we got big news that's come out of DC, where you have the most acquitted president in the history of the United States.
Impeachment champion.
Yeah, the back-to-back impeachment champion. I don't know if you want to talk about that. Maybe we can mention it,
So, I think because I listened to the two different things going on at the same time. There was the whole thing with the doctored evidence. When you look at the briefing, for that they provided to basically try to convict Trump, there's a lot of like news articles and op-ed pieces, wasn't it? There was no like, and it was source. It was kind of like also the first impeachment. Statements from someone who said something else, who heard someone else say something. He said, she said, and they said over there. Like, oh, the friend of the person that knew this person and knew that person totally saw Trump say this or act like this, or he really, his intentions were this. And then I even re-listened to the speeches and stuff where he was saying like, again, proving like Trump said, I know some of you are going to the Capitol to peacefully make your voice heard.
Which was edited out in the deposition from the prosecution in the trial. They cut that part of it out. Yeah. So that is doctoring evidence.
And then there was this whole thing, like, so they pulled like tweets and stuff. And they said, oh, these are official sources. What do you mean they're official sources? So they doctored and put little Twitter verification things on there, which don't really mean too much. Like,
yeah, it basically means that the person that they thought said something, it wasn't verified. Like, I don't know if I have the tweet, but yeah. So they again doctoring evidence. That's that's a high crime, really.
And well, I mean, just think of it like our friend Spike Cohen is a verified Twitter user, so it doesn't mean if he says something, therefore it's a verified source. Like, I mean, it's verified in a sense comes from him, but it's not doesn't mean if it's true or not. There's verified Twitter accounts all over Twitter that are saying whatever the hell they want. There are those that will, verified Twitter accounts that will say, truthful things and actually like factual things, but just because you have one doesn't mean anything. But they threw that on there to kind of make it look more legit, which was doctoring it. And then, they called, like, I think they asked him about it. What was it? The guy from Philadelphia, was it?
No, I think you're talking about Senator Mike Lee from Alabama, where they said that Trump had called him during the election objections, and they claim that the president was trying to pressure this senator to continue the objections and to do all of these different types of things. And the senator's sitting in the chamber, and he's like, "What? I'm right here. No, that's not true." And so the House proceeding manager had to be like, "Okay, well, we're withdrawing this evidence because it's not true." Like there was nothing.
But there was also that interview. Was it CNN or MSNBC?
Oh, the follow-up with the lawyer. Yes.
Yeah. Where he just like got up and left because they were like pushing on some question. Did it have to do with this doctored evidence thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. He was stressing the point that they doctored evidence, and the media is playing it like that's no big deal. It's like, what's the problem? And he's like, where is the sense of justice if it is that these people are going to fabricate evidence and you're not holding them to account, but you keep kind of, pushing back on the Republicans for some reason. And he went to task on them. I mean, that was the great thing Like we knew this was never going to happen. Impeachment was never going to happen. They never had the votes.
It's political points because, like, when the first impeachment went around, and I was telling people, like, yeah, he's going to get impeached, but he's probably not going to get removed,
right?
Because the Democrats are just going to vote partisan lines. They're just going to vote to impeach. Yes. Impeachment, and I've told people, impeachment is like a formal write-up for a job. You get written up. Doesn't mean you necessarily get fired, because that comes later.
Yes.
They decide, okay, is this severe enough? I mean, granted, it's a little different with a job, but yeah, that's what it is. So they do the impeachment. He doesn't get convicted. And I was telling people, it's totally a partisan thing.
Correct.
Because, yeah, Macy, you could sit there and talk about, like, yes, like, I mean, in my libertarian sense, I think, like, politics in general is just filled with corruption.
Yes.
We could that's a separate thing you can talk about. But the fact that, Trump did this one thing that every other president has totally done, which isn't really the worst thing a president could do.
Correct.
Which is, negotiating with other countries to basically work things out. Like, they do this all the time.
Yes.
And then, so then that happens. He doesn't get convicted, and everyone's like, okay, whatever. So then, second time, the same people that I'm talking to are like, oh, this is a disgrace because, they're totally just towing the party line to vote to not convict him. I'm thinking, but that's what I said about the other things. So
exactly.
Like, they're both doing it then. Like, the Democrats vote party lines to always want to impeach him no matter what it is. Correct. And the Republicans will vote no matter what. And which are separate.
Well, not all. 7 did defect.
Right. But still,
generally,
the thing that comes out is all that is going to happen no matter what you do.
Correct.
It's the entire, like, conviction, that the entire trial that they went through, that revealed doctored evidence, opinion pieces, like no one's going to really be honest about any of this and look at what actually happened.
Correct. It was decided even before it arrived. And everybody could have been speaking gibberish, Greek, Latin, and Sanskrit, and nobody could understand it. You would have gotten the same outcome because, as you say, impeachment is a political mechanism. Ironically, so is, everybody's complaining the same thing is what's going on with your elected president right now. The whole reason he's elected does not vindicate the evidence out there of some very improprietous and very funny things that went on with the election. Just because, senators and others voted on it doesn't mean it's been investigated and proven that this is legitimate. It's a political thing. But exactly what you're saying, it was grandstanding, right? It was a chance for the Democrats to come up and basically scream, orange man bad, put a whole set of stuff up there and, do imagery and go and cry and, I feared for my life and all this nonsense, right? And, Trump is the worst thing since Hitler and all that ridiculous stuff. And the Trump legal team on the first day kind of dropped the ball because they were still treating it like this is actually a court case, right? So they were presenting legal arguments and free speech and these other things. But by the second day, they'd kind of got their shit together. And by the second day, they were actually exposing the fraud, exposing the doctored evidence. And they did their grandstanding as well. They did a 10-minute video showing all of the Democrats that have been calling for violence, and like even Ted Cruz and others were sending questions up to be asked, if a politician raises money to bail out rioters, does that encourage violence? So you could see it was just, if the Democrats want to play this game and grandstand, the Republicans are going to show how much the media's lying, the hypocrisy. They're going to do the whole thing as well.
Yeah.
And
it's a mess.
It is a mess. And what I loved was they wanted to call witnesses, right? So the prosecution side wanted to call witnesses. So the Republicans say, well, yeah, we got 301 witnesses, and the first one was Nancy Pelosi, right? And she would have to answer for why it is that she didn't want armed security at the Capitol, why she'd, turned down requests for reinforcements. She has a lot to answer for in terms of why was she on call with the Capitol Police head. What was that conversation about? Was she actually the one talking about maybe opening up the Capitol to shut down the debate? So the minute they saw that, it's like, okay, no, we're not calling witnesses anymore.
Yeah, this is the whole thing because I saw the quitting happen, and then I just was like, okay,
Yeah. Nobody cared. Like, did you care?
no,
No.
because when it comes to issues that I care about, and I'm looking at it like this, like this whole impeachment thing, this whole thing with Trump at this point is just a distraction.
Do you know what it's distracting you from?
What?
We'll discuss that in a minute, but go on.
Oh, it's just like I was again, conversations I have with people. It's my big concern, and it's the same thing with anything the government does. Is you get all the stuff that happens when the bigger problem is what's going on in the world, is what's going on in our country, is with this pandemic.
Yes.
While they're trying to distract us with all these issues that ultimately have no, maybe some short-term consequence, but quite minor compared to whatever the government's doing.
Yes.
We've talked about COVID. Everyone's talking about COVID.
Yes. Yes.
And I can talk about how, like, okay, here's the thing is the bumbling idiots that is the government, local government, state governments, and federal government with how they've handled it has basically blurred the lines between what we could have done scientifically properly to handle this pandemic versus what has been done that just leads to massive amounts of people that just don't trust the government for anything anymore.
Correct.
So you're trying to do good things to, wear masks, social distance and stuff, limit crowds to basically flatten the curve and all this stuff. Perfectly legitimate in a scientific way. You completely fuck that up over the last year at this point. And all your legitimately good practices get lost with all the bad practices. You can, people making fun of stuff like, oh, it's so funny. You can go to a restaurant and sit down and COVID doesn't hit you if you're sitting down. You can take off
or
your
if you're
mask.
eating something. Yeah.
Yeah. And all this stuff. And it's like, yeah. And basically what it does in terms of, I don't know if you want to call it mass psychology or whatever, the people just don't trust anything the government says. The government could say 2 masks are better, which if you want to talk statistically, technically, yes, but it just seems ludicrous at this point because people are like, we've been wearing 1 mask this whole time and you're telling us we're 2 masks because you have nothing better to do at this point. You're not doing anything proper anymore. It's just, let's throw in like all the good, like I said, all the good stuff gets lost in all the bad stuff. No one cares anymore. And then what happens is down the line is now, and of course, this is like a, what is it? It's gonna sound pretty bad when I describe it this way. So I've watched a video that talked about what's his face. You've heard about the story? It was like back in the 90s where this parent basically killed the guy who sexually assaulted his kid.
Okay,
I remember the story.
There was
a story in the U.S., and I'm trying to remember the exact person. Some people might know who I'm talking about, but in the video they talk about different things, like when predators are dealing with kids, what they'll do is they'll do little things to get the kid comfortable with things.
Yeah,
they'll push the grooming. Yes.
Yeah,
they'll push boundaries to see, and then eventually, by the time the act takes place, the kid doesn't know what's going on.
Oh, are we sure when we talk about this before we get nuked on YouTube?
Hold on. It's the Disclaimer. Same thing. It's the same thing.
Yes,
government does to people.
Absolutely.
We're going to push the boundaries. We're essentially grooming the population.
Yes, salami tactics. A little bit at a time.
Yes. But sometimes not even a little bit. It's little bits and maybe something big to like see how they react. And the thing is, what I think is good is countries, and not just the US, but even we talked about like in the European countries. Some of these people are like the Europeans are way more like compliant with the government than the Americans.
Yeah, in some parts, absolutely.
Yeah. And they're starting to have some like protests and stuff that's popping up.
Yeah.
Because they're like, hey, we've been doing this a whole year.
Yeah. Some people don't have the resources to go on, but it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
So in recent times, we've learned a lot about this, the incidents of the impeachment. We've learned a bit about Biden's presidency. We've learned that he has absolutely no plan for dealing with COVID. Fauci has been basically shown to be an idiot. He went from you don't need to wear a mask to okay, you should wear a mask, and now
he gets paid more than a president.
Yeah, I know. So, but I mean, this is why people don't trust the government. Even the grandstanding. Brian Sicknick, which was the officer that was supposedly killed by a fire extinguisher on January 6th, and they had a big procession in the Capitol building and all this different sorts of things. Not true. He was never killed by a fire extinguisher. Yeah. Although that was used as all of this grandstanding was used to try and
retracted it, but
they had to retract it. And he was a Trump supporter, apparently.
They just put a little line at the bottom of the original article.
Yeah,
this didn't happen.
Yeah. So I mean, just absolute propaganda to the highest. The media is lying flat out. The government has no fucking clue. So what do they do? Circus. Let's do impeachment 2.0, right?
Yeah.
Let's remind everybody about how bad the Orange Man is, and maybe they wouldn't notice how bad we're fucking up.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. And it's just, to be fair, it's the same thing that's going on out here. I don't think we're crazy enough. If they told us to do the 2 mask thing out here, I think people would really snap. But yeah, we're done with this thing. And the governments around the world have absolutely zero credibility left. They're basically at end stage propaganda, which is look over there.
There's only a small handful of countries that have gotten this handled the way they're because surprise everyone, government can't handle things. They can't handle large problems like this. Yeah, they're close to this. Like the small handful of countries that have handled it either have small populations, small areas, or just or basically from the get-go basically hit it right away, like did it properly. It's usually countries, I think, like Asian countries, some of them have handled it right. I know, like sure. Japan doesn't really have a problem. No. Taiwan's fine. Yeah. Australia even, they basically instead of having one continuous lockdown across their whole country, they kind of go in and out of lockdown with each state.
Yeah, that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, and they've locked down interstate travel. You need like a permit or something to cross states.
Yeah.
So sometimes they get little resurgences, but so they just contain it as they come up. They're not just doing one continuous lockdown and just like, okay, we're just going to wait until people go insane.
Yeah. And then you got the ones that are bucking the trend. So you got like Singapore, I don't think they locked down. They're fine. Sweden didn't lock down. They're fine. Florida's fully open. They're fine. One of the Dakotas, either north or south, I can't remember.
Someone tried painting Florida as like, oh, their death rate or their infection rate. It's like, no.
And it's an elderly population in Florida, so that's very surprising.
We're gonna tie that into
we'll
elderly.
The elderly, which is kind of the dovetail I was going into. But just to show that, yes, and the research is showing that the lockdowns are not effective any better than the voluntary act of social distancing and wearing a mask.
If people are well informed, they're typically going to behave in a safer manner.
Correct.
Not like they're not going to do perfectly, but they're going to definitely be a lot safer, because I think it's this way. Either you have the voluntary side, so there's always going to be stragglers, people that aren't going to follow the recommendations.
Correct.
But it's the same thing with the lockdowns.
Yeah, it's actually worse with the lockdowns because people are so pent up.
Yeah,
they go to underground
You actually
parties.
get more rebellious tendencies in general.
Exactly.
Because it's like, I'm not going to do it because you told me. And that small group of people that respond that way,
correct,
are going to make it worse.
Exactly. In fact, out here in the UK, the underground rave scene in London is booming. So they raised the penalty to like £10,000 because there are so many underground parties taking place in London and I guess maybe parts of the UK and stuff. People are done with it.
Do you know where these are?
People. I'm in a group that if I wanted to go, I could. Not that I would, not that I would do such things. That
of course,
would be
you wouldn't go. You wouldn't
illegal.
go. Yeah, it's illegal. You wouldn't go.
I would never go to somewhere like that. But it's a real problem, right? It's a real problem.
Yeah.
And for the UK especially, we're grasping at straws, right? We just instituted this travel ban. So if it is I'm flying in from a red country, they'll call that, a highly infectious place like Dubai, for instance. In fact, I have a friend who just came back from Dubai, and he had to lie. He lied on his form and basically said he came from Spain. So his connecting flight was in Spain, and he jumped across to the UK. But he originally came from Dubai. If you come from Dubai or any of these countries, you have to buy almost a £2,000 isolation package that includes you locking yourself into one of these designated hotels and a series of COVID tests that you have to do in that period before you're allowed to enter the country. And if you lie and say you haven't been to one of these places, it's a 10-year sentence, prison, direct to jail. 10 fucking years.
Jeez.
Raping a child is less than 10 years in the UK. Right?
Yeah, we're really gonna get demonetized now.
Yeah, we're fucked, and not in a good way. But yeah, I mean this, and it shows that the government has absolutely no grip on reality. We're gonna be locking up teenagers who fly from Portugal for 10. You think we have the prison capacity to put these people in prison for a delinquent teenager lying about being in Portugal? This is why everybody's fed up with the government, because they're fucking clueless.
Yeah.
You know who else was clueless?
Is this where we're moving into the new topic? Old people. No.
Old people. Damn, Amos.
No. Cuomo.
Yeah, he seemed to be pretty fucking clueless.
Mr. Handlebar Nipples.
He's got him pierced. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Why would you know that?
So I was listening to a show that called them Handlebar Nipples.
Oh my gosh.
So was it some aides and like a secretary of his basically came out, like no secret source, no like behind this. No, they came out with their name and everything, and basically told the media about how he knowingly. So a couple things, and I think they said even Whitmer did this too. Whitmer,
yes.
Michigan did this.
Michigan, yeah,
where they were sending infected people. So instead of utilizing like the ship, so there was the ship that the government sent in as almost like a triage kind of hospital thing.
Yeah, Nightingale Hospital kind of thing.
Right. Because they were doing because there was the whole thing with the cruises, and they thought, okay, the cruises are getting infected, so they're stuck out at sea. So because they're isolated, they thought, okay, we need to use this idea to like isolate people. When things initially took off, when the pandemic was starting. Excuse me, there were people like setting up field hospitals. There were also people using cruise ships.
Yes.
And the cruise companies were like, hey, the government will pay us, because obviously nobody's going on a
Nobody's going on a cruise.
So they'll pay us to use our ships for hospitals. Fine.
Yes.
And a lot of those hospitals weren't used.
I think they're gone at this point.
Ventilators.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to what happened in Puerto Rico when that storm hit.
They found them.
They found ventilators hidden away. Like, I don't know if you remember in Puerto Rico when
water and the supplies from the hurricane.
When they were like complaining, oh, Trump didn't send us anything. They're hiding in warehouses, going bad. I mean, it's water, but it's probably not going bad. But certain supplies are going bad.
Yeah. I mean, think how ridiculous that is. You hate Trump so much, you're going to make your own people suffer to score political points. That's how demented politicians can be. And then, but anyway, continue the story.
So, and anyway, so that, they've hid ventilators. They don't use the resources, and some of their field hospitals they barely used.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if they're just trying to pump up to make it look like, our hospitals can't handle it or whatever. Now, granted, New York had the highest death rate in the country, I think.
Yes.
But you can't really ignore the fact that Cuomo signed an executive order that sent infected patients, instead of to hospitals or quarantine units or these special things that are offered, sent them to nursing homes.
Well, they originally came from nursing homes. They tested positive. They went to the hospital, and he sent them back.
And there were some young people got sent there too, though.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the young people, but yeah, that was the big issue.
Basically, and we knew that this disease was basically just going crazy. Like it was just going to run right through a bunch of old people.
Yeah,
young people and just or older adults, it was definitely going to infect, but nowhere near as much as like I think like your 55 and 65 and above populations.
Yeah, mostly
like
70 and above.
Yeah, basically the death rate was like 20% at one point among old people.
Amongst the elderly, I think it went up to about between 5 and 10% for if you were over 70. And if you had underlying conditions, it went up to about 20%. So if you're old and had underlying conditions, it was pretty high.
But it was a lot higher than any other group.
Yeah, the elderly and the sick. Yeah.
So, and then of course all those death numbers were hidden.
Yes.
They covered up a lot of the stats. They had them, but they just didn't reveal them to the public. They did it in New York. They did it in Michigan with Whitmer. And now Cuomo's being investigated.
Yeah. I mean, this is not news, which is the funny thing, because I think this information actually came out not that long ago. No, actually, maybe a while ago, probably back in April, when it was in like the peak of the pandemic. This actually came out. The difference now is that we got a whistleblower who's coming out and saying, yeah, we were instructed to hide the numbers. We were instructed to not speak about this stuff. But this is not, we've actually discussed this before. But now, he did a press conference, and of course he blamed everybody, including the staff. So he's trying to say it wasn't the sick patients that went back in. It was actually the staff that was going in and out of the place.
Oh, jeez.
And then he pivoted and he said, well, the patients were asymptomatic and we didn't know if they could actually spread the disease. So
I liked how he was on the news and they were like basically asking him about it. And he goes,
yeah,
see, this is where we need to stick to the facts.
Yeah.
When they quoted exact numbers, we know this many people died in nursing homes.
Yes.
Well, after you instituted this executive order. These are this is where we need to stay with the facts, because this is where the Republicans like to play politics. Yeah. There was no politics. It was straight stats. It wasn't like, Republican so and so said that. No. It was just, hey, you passed this thing, people died. Yeah. What do you have to say about it? Stay with the facts.
Yeah. So I mean, his facts is apparently they were killed by the staff, as well as the asymptomatic patient. So it's kind of like one or the other. So like, which is it? But yeah, no, it's not looking good for him. And I think even now there's a call for a full-on investigation into the matter in New York.
The asymptomatic argument doesn't work anymore though, because I think it was like 3 or 4 months into it, like June or July, I remember CDC was coming out and saying that the asymptomatic cases are actually a lot lower than initially thought.
Yes.
Like they do happen. They're just really rare. And then that's when they even came out and said like contact service transmission is very rare too.
Right. I mean, I think the majority, I can't remember what the stats were, but the majority of people are going to be asymptomatic. If you're under 70, the majority will be asymptomatic. And then out of that, I think it's like maybe 20% of that will actually have symptoms. And then out of that 20%, like 10% of that will have severe symptoms where they need like a ventilator. Mm-hmm. And then a percentage of that are going to die. So in terms of infection, that's pretty high as it goes. But yeah, what Cuomo did, I really do hope there's an investigation. I really do hope they kind of look into this politicizing. It is sickening how politicians, especially you guys in the US, who have seen politicians politicize this virus, just to score points, screaming at Trump not giving the ventilators when there were plenty of ventilators, screaming about, the hospitals are overflowing when the cruise ships that were rigged for the hospitals were never used. That kind of thing. Yeah. Sickening.
this is where I basically address with people is like anytime the U.S. experiences hardship, it's not good. Not just not good because of the hardship itself. It's not good because the government's going to try to seize power during that time. I've talked. I know I've mentioned this before. Like if you look, one of the first major, I guess I don't know if you want to consider like a modern day sort of hardship, like not really modern day. So a lot of people talk about the Great Depression,
Yeah.
but no one really knows like what happened because of it.
Right.
So it was, there was the Dust Bowl, there was the crash of the market, 25% that we know of, unemployed because we didn't keep track quite as much back then. But all these things happened and no one really addressed what happened as a result of that.
Hmm.
And the big things were Social Security.
Yep.
And just welfare, as we understand it, basically started developing because of that. Because we were
Great
pushed.
New Deal.
Yeah. But I mean, the big thing was the system in place, the private institutions, public institutions that were in place were pushed to a certain, basically, it's not that the crisis itself was like grooming, like we talked about before, but it pushed it to a point that people were willing to take anything the government was going to give them.
Yes.
So a lot of these fraternities, a lot of these private institutions that were in place to help people, like these were organizations that were the precursors to our modern day insurance companies.
Yeah, friendly societies and mutual aid societies. Yeah.
They started to fade away because the government ramped up their efforts to basically compensate, and not just compensate, but completely overrun.
Yeah.
And now you don't really have mutual aid societies. I mean, you have maybe some very, very small local like groups.
Yeah.
But they're not like they were before. And
no.
What happened as a result? We have this entire welfare state developing within the US because of that. All because there was a crisis that the government basically ran with to institute a bunch of policies. Same thing with this. We were pushed. Now, it's definitely been pushed a lot more by the government. The government basically saw, hey, here's a good opportunity. Let's not just this thing going to affect us. We're going to actually ramp up our own efforts to make this even worse.
Correct.
Shutdowns. And then what is that going to turn into? Now you're going to have, basically in the future, anytime we're going to have anything like, God forbid we actually get a disease that's worse than COVID.
Ebola?
No. Some sort of coronavirus that is more transmitted and just a slightly bit more
deadly. Yeah.
Just a bit, just a little bit. Like,
sure.
If it had like a 1% death rate.
Yeah. Just
imagine what kind of hell on earth that would be for the government to just not just for the people, obviously. So people dying and all this, that's bad. Obviously, yes. But the government's going to use that to do with,
I mean, that's what government does, right? Yeah. Apart from tax farming us, which is, their number one job, they need power. The more they can control parts of the economy, charity, research, education, and stuff like that, they become the gatekeepers to money, power, and influence. So yeah, as we're learning from all these politicians, never let a good crisis go to waste. The pandemic took place. Biden was screaming, "Oh, Trump is useless." All the Democrats is like, "Look how bad it is." So many people died today under Trump and all this nonsense.
Biden comes in.
Biden comes in.
The trajectory is way out of my control.
Crickets. We can't do anything. Yeah, exactly. But what does end up happening in the space of that is you guys have been robbed of your rights. You guys have been locked down. Well, depending on your various states and stuff like that. And they're distracting you guys with the circus instead of actually passing legislation to, give relief, right? As somebody pointed out in the chat, the military has basically turned Washington, D.C. into a green zone. People are kind of saying, well, that's very simple because they don't want Biden actually interacting with the public. Because if he goes out, he's not going to draw a crowd. Nobody's going to show up to a Biden rally or a Biden anything. So there's a lot in play it's just very sneaky. It's very, very sneaky. And I don't trust your government as far as you can fling them. So yeah. So I hope the investigation into Cuomo takes place. I hope, the families are compensated. It's the same thing out here. We're dealing with the same bullshit, the same, nonsense. And it's all smart language. Like I talked about the other day, they talked about, oh yes, 1,700 people have died in the UK over the last over the last day or whatever it was. They didn't say 1,700 people died from COVID. They didn't even say 1,700 people died, related to COVID. They just said 1,700 people have died. But the death rate in the UK is like 1,800 is the average per day. So this is actually below the average. Yeah. But if you're not listening, if you're not paying attention, it looks like they're trying to manipulate the situation for nefarious ends. Let's say that.
Cool. Sorry. It is, yesterday was President's Day.
Yeah. Congratulations. You actually, did you celebrate? Did you do anything? You had your day off?
No, I worked yesterday. But with I've told you with my job with the cold, we had a shorter day.
Yeah, you did say that. That's good.
So 2 short days in a row, which is nice.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Do you know who received a fantastic rally of almost 870,000 people on President's Day? Donald Trump.
Where?
In Florida. He was driving past.
Yeah, Florida.
Yeah, of course, Florida. he was driving past, and they had a "We Love the President" Day in Florida. And I mean, obviously, I don't know if the count is accurate, but they say it's near 1 million people actually came out with the Trump flags, American flags. Make America great. How many came out for Biden?
I don't think he had a rally.
You think?
Yeah.
I don't think he could put together a rally if his life depended on it.
You were touching on something before, and I thought we'd tie it into our other topic about
Sure.
Do you want to talk about Gina Carano or Parler first?
Yeah, we could do let's do Gina Carano, and we'll slide it into the Nazi chat system.
Jesus. So everyone kind of knows of. Now, I think there's a little bit of I'll kind of preface with this. It's she's still like, while she is definitely like right leaning as a person, she's still kind of part of that like Hollywood celebrity, not like elite, but definitely she's part of the crowd.
Yeah.
So everyone kind of like pushing, like I've seen some like, this is what bravery looks like, and I'm thinking there are braver. There's a little bit of that hero worship that I'm kind of like, but I do understand what they're getting at.
Yes.
So Gina Carano, everyone knows of as she was Cara Dune from the Mandalorian series. Yes. Basically, she was a former shock trooper for the rebellion who was from Alderaan, and then it got blown up and all this.
Yes.
She works with the Mandalorian to like help different things. Like she became like a marshal for the rebellion over one of the planets, the planet that the Mandalorian was from.
Yeah.
And like there's a lot of stuff she does. So she kind of is playing up like she's like, I think it was a UFC fighter.
Yes. And she won. She was actually a title holder for the UFC.
Yeah. So she's playing as like, basically the strong female character in the Mandalorian.
Literally.
Yeah, like actually, like not this,
not a strong emotional character, but like a physically strong female.
Yeah, and it's not supposed, and not playing up like some, some like feminist sort of rub it in your face. I'm a strong woman. No mention of her being a woman actually is really like becomes a focus. Excuse me. So she had made some tweets. And I've looked at these tweets. The big one that they were really, claiming to be abhorrent is that they've. So Disney fired her because she was making tweets that they claimed were abhorrent. The big one they were saying was, oh, it's an anti-Semitic tweet.
Mhm.
And I looked at it. Basically, it was just like a retelling of history where she's talking about how, like, basically shedding light on the fact that, like, if for anyone who knows the Holocaust, World War II in Germany, all of that happened, that didn't just happen overnight. There were events that led up to it. There was a gradual, it's not so gradual like over decades, but it was definitely a few years
Yes.
where Hitler was disarming people. There was propaganda campaigns. There was a lot of things that led up to, then there was Kristallnacht,
Yep.
all the stuff that led up to, yeah, there was the things that led up to, the Warsaw Ghetto. Even there was things that led up to basically the dehumanizing of the Jewish population in Germany that then led to rounding them up, and then sending them off to the concentration camps.
Correct.
But one of the things that was happening was, she was specifically shedding light on was the turning of neighbors against each other. So back in those days, like even just, you could even say back like 20, 30 years ago in the US, even just cultures in general, Western culture kind of had this idea of your neighbors. You interact with your neighbors, whether it was just visiting, borrowing a cup of sugar, that kind of thing. Those
welcome to the neighborhood.
Yeah. You had that across Europe. So in Germany, they basically the government used that against itself.
Correct.
To basically report on political enemies of the state.
Yes.
Communists, gays, Jews, all this. Yeah. And so she was talking about this like, hey, similar to what's going on in the US, the idea of reporting on your neighbors for being political dissidents, political enemies of those in power. Just talking about it, and actually very generally. She wasn't even specifically saying COVID, conservatives, Trump, any of this.
I actually have the tweet here if you want me to read it.
Yeah.
So I've got it here from the Daily Wire because that ties into this story. So it was first, there was a picture and it said, the Jews were beaten in the streets not by Nazi soldiers, but by neighbors, even by children. And then the second part of it goes on to say, because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where the Nazi soldiers could round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews.
Yeah.
How is that any different from hating somebody for their political views? That's the quote.
At no point is there a mention of any political party, no American anything, no Trump, no COVID, or anything like that. Just talking about it.
Yes, this is a fact of history.
And as soon as this came out and people were defending the decision of Disney, I kept saying, "Oh, she's anti-Semitic. She's saying conservatives are Jews. She's saying this and that and the other." Now, and I'm like, while she is a right-leaning individual, it has been revealed recently, she at no point made it that you cannot. It is just absolutely disingenuous and dishonest to say that she's talking about conservatives. Now, you could maybe try to infer that, and maybe that was going on in her mind, but you can't make that claim.
Correct.
At all. So they're running with this. And now she's anti-Semitic. Now she's anti-mask, she's pro-COVID as a hoax and all this stuff. And I've looked at all this stuff, and I haven't seen anything that even said, she's. I bet you she's on set, whatever set she's working on. She's following all the things. She's not making a fuss. Like a lot of these people who understand when they're in the industry. Like I heard about this. Like there's Hollywood celebrities that are conservatives. They just don't talk about their politics because they know it's not good for them.
Correct.
But if they're that smart to not do that, they're also smart enough to just following along whatever the workplace policy is. So I bet you she's up there, she's wearing a mask, social distancing, doing all this stuff because she knows what she has to do her job. But they're saying just because she has a conversation about some COVID stuff, some other things, Now she's anti-mask, anti-this, anti-that. Like they make her out to basically be like the worst version of like the caricature of conservatives.
Yeah, a light orange woman, you know. And,
Yeah. she is actually kind of tan too.
Yeah, she's jacked and tanned.
Yeah. She's actually nowadays, because like if you look at her like back in her UFC days, she was actually quite thin.
Yes.
So she's actually gotten a little thick. She's thicker, but she's not fat.
Yeah, she's up the trend. She's definitely up the trend. So
I don't know if you want a woman on trend.
They turn into men on trend, but yeah, it does happen.
So yeah, she gets fired. She's not going to be part of Mandalorian season 3. I don't know how they're going to work that. I think I have to look into this, but I think Favreau wasn't too happy about that.
Ironically, I actually had this conversation with Brian last night on the private live stream. We actually discussed that, and he raised a good point that there does not seem to be a lot of outcry from Favreau and the Mandalorian team. They didn't come to her defense, but it's a bigger picture than what most people are kind of putting on, because this actually has a lot to do with Kathleen Kennedy and the failure of the Star Wars trilogy. The reason, the narrative that Disney's been pushing for the longest while has been that the fan base of Star Wars are misogynist, anti-woman, hate women, yada, 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 right? So we know all the antics, right? And that has been Kathleen Kennedy's defense of the failure of the Star Wars trilogy. The problem is you got Gina Carano's character not only being well beloved in her role as the man in The Mandalorian, she had the #1 selling toy from Hasbro, and it shows that entire narrative is bullshit. The men do not hate women.
Yeah.
So the rumor is, now I get this from Doomcock. He's a guy, he does inside rumor mills in Hollywood and stuff like that. They wanted to fire her long before this incident had actually come out. Like not that long ago, Gina Carano in her Twitter profile put up her pronouns were beep, bop, boop, kind of like a play on R2-D2. So she got a lot of heat for that. And they were using this as an excuse to fire her. Now, what's interesting about this is that some insider leaked this firing, the idea that she was going to be fired, before the Q1 call, the conference call for the investors, Q1. They leaked it before because the investors understand she's a marketable commodity. Like, why are you going to fire somebody who's actually making you money, right? Yeah. And so this is where there seems to be like an internal conflict going on at Lucasfilms, well, in Disney specifically. One half of the company is like, no, we need to work on this marketable commodity. And then you got ideologues like Kathleen Kennedy and her crew who are like, no, silence the opposition, this sort of thing. So in many ways, the tweet is an excuse. And not only was she fired from Disney, she was actually dropped from her talent agency, UTA, United Talent Association, whatever.
Pretty big one too, from what I heard.
I think one of the biggest indeed.
So you were talking about how you referenced the numbers from Daily Wire. So she gets reached out by the Daily Wire, so Ben Shapiro's company.
Ben Shapiro, who is a Jew. He's as like conservative Jew as you get, right? And so
reaches out to her, and I guess they're going to be making a movie.
They're going to be making a movie
where she's a star. Now, for them to just kind of jump to that, I kind of wonder if there was maybe already discussions going on before this.
Possibly. Did you see the movie that Daily Wire put out? We discussed it last week.
Run, Hide, something.
Yeah, Run, Hide, Fight. It's out. It's actually really good. And you know why we know it's really good? I mean, I have seen it. The Rotten Tomatoes score is 23, and the audience score is like 93. Right? So Hollywood hates it. It's probably
the official critics for Rotten Tomatoes are fairly left-leaning. So when they're watching it, knowing that it's a conservatively produced movie, they're like, they're having
they're shilling for the studios. They're shilling for.
Did it seem when you watched it, did it feel any different from a Hollywood produced movie?
I mean, it's not a high up. It's a cheap Hollywood movie. There are a couple parts that were kind of cringe, but no, it was actually very, very well done. I mean, it's not a great movie by any stretch, but it's good. It is actually a good storytelling, and the protagonist is it's a woman, and she's got an army veteran dad and stuff. He teaches her how to hunt, and it's a school shooting that takes place, and it's that whole thing, and it's done very, very well. So yeah, I recommend it. Maybe if you watch it, you and I can kind of do a breakdown on the film. But this here's the ironic thing, where the woke walkers on Twitter have always screaming and shouting and yelling and snarling, just go and build your own, just go and build your own social network, just go and make your own movies, make your own music, build your own China, whatever, it's nonsense that they keep spewing out. And now that the Daily Wire is actually doing it, and they're not the only ones. Even Tim Pool is discussing, he actually wants to start doing films. I mean, obviously not grand, big budget films, but you could do situational comedies and situational films. I mean, one of the greatest films of all time is 12 Angry Men, and it's a discussion about a court case, and it's 12 men sitting at a table discussing the court case. It doesn't have to be expensive. More and more people are actually starting to rise up to push away from the garbage and the progressive ideology that's being spewed out of Hollywood. So I think it's great. I hope they do well. I mean, we've seen Christian movies kind of coming out trying to, push a message. There's always shit Christian movies. Those movies fucking suck. But there is a grassroots of it.
Sorry.
Yeah, God's Not Dead, and they made a part 2 for some fucking reason. But yeah,
part 3 maybe.
Oh, jeez. But yeah, I'm fully on board with that. I think you do need conservative, storytellers and stuff like that. I miss the days of Paul Ryan and, Harrison Ford playing as the president, and, was it Tom Clancy novels that have been adapted, The Hunt for Red October and Cold War. Those are great stories, even to this day. Hunt for Red October still stands up to this day. You're not getting any of that coming out of Hollywood today.
Yeah. I think someone had said Red Dawn, the remake.
Right, I haven't seen it, but yeah.
Yeah, so basically, it was Red Dawn from the first one was about Russia invading the U.S.
Right.
And then they did a remake, which is about North Korea invading the U.S.
Interesting.
The initial intent was not for North Korea.
Who did they want?
What do you think?
China.
Yeah.
We love our Chinese overlords here on the 10K Rum podcast.
They just couldn't, I don't know why.
I mean, that's the other part of the Gina Carano controversy, is because not only has Pedro Pascal, her co-star who plays the Mandalorian, tweeted out much worse things, much more racial, antagonistic things. Not only have the writers of The Mandalorian come out with anti-white propaganda and how white people are this, that, and the other and stuff like that. All of them got a pass. All of them. Including the controversy behind Mulan being shot and Disney thanking the authorities that are holding the Uyghur Muslim, concentration camps. Disney thanked them. All of this is looked over. All of this gets a pass. But no, this woman warning about, turning Americans against Americans as being dangerous and a precursor to very bad things that happened during World War II. No, too much. That's over the line. We can't have that. But speaking of Nazis.
Oh, God. So Parler came back.
Yes.
So for anyone who doesn't remember kind of what happened, so Parler was kind of like a Twitter alternative, which is important because that played into someone tried saying Parler played a role in the Capitol riot.
Yes.
The Capitol thing, but it wasn't because they don't have a function for that. Anyways, so Amazon Web Services, first off, they dropped Parler.
No, it was Google and Apple and the stores.
Yeah, the stores, but Amazon Web Services was their host.
Right. So it started with them dropping him from the app stores. Then Amazon,
dropped them pretty much no notice, which was breach of contract. No, I don't think there's anything that's come out about what they're using the host right now, but they came back.
Yes.
And I don't know. There's not much. I don't know what else is there to really know about them coming back. Well, all I know is they did come back.
Yeah, I mean, there is quite a saga. So was it Dan Bongino, who is he's a conservative commentator as well as an investor in Parler. He's been keeping people abreast of what's been going on behind the scenes. So yes, he was one of the original people screaming like, we do not want to host this service with these left-leaning progressive hosting services like Amazon Web Services. But the CEO was like, no, we need capacity. We need this. It's reliable, whatever. And the CEO made the decision to use Amazon Web Services. Ironically, Amazon Web Services also hosts Twitter in direct competition to Parler. So it's kind of, we don't know, but let's just say it might be a bit of conflict of interest in that regard. And the reason that Amazon's claimed that Parler was taken down was because of hate speech and the Capitol riots and all these other types of things. Mind you, Twitter not only hosts right out terrorism, not right out pornography, not right out child pornography.
Oh jeez.
I mean, you could go into parts of Twitter that are the absolute debasement of the human condition. But that's fine. All of that's fine. Twitter gets a pass. And as we've seen, Parler was taken down. Anyway, eventually Dan Bongino, the CEO, I think they came together and they fired the CEO. And he's been doing the propaganda ring right now. He's on Fox News and all these other places basically saying like, he was fired because he wanted it to be a free speech platform and the investors turned against him. Now, the problem with that is, of course, we have the track record from Dan Bongino and others talking about the implementation of Parler from its introduction, from its concept to the launch, through the controversy. And you're really trying to say that Dan Bongino, who's been one of the biggest advocates against Twitter censorship and these other things, was the one advocating for censorship? When we have he does a daily show, just like everybody else. You have the timeline of him showing, no, he's always wanted it to be free speech. So it almost looks like people are implying, of course, this is speculation, that the CEO is now being paid and coerced by the CNNs and the medias and so forth to try and paint it as the people who are running it now is maniacal.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of the controversy behind the scenes, not to mention the death threats and all the crazy things that have, the Twitterati has been released upon anybody associated with Parler. But it's back. From what I understand, they're using the same services as Gab. I don't know if that's true or not. But the guy who is doing the hosting on Gab is allegedly a white supremacist. I don't know if that's true or not, but he doesn't give a shit. He'll host anybody, and he has a Fediverse distributed system where it really is impossible to kind of take down the machines. So it's a very complicated system. I don't know if it's true. But as of yesterday, yesterday was the 15th of February. Oh, happy Valentine's Day for those that may have missed it. Parler is back online. So we Nazis and we misogynists and woman haters and transphobes could finally find a place to speak.
Yeah, no, keep in mind now, okay. I had Parler before everyone kind of went crazy. I had it before it was cool. No, not before.
Before it was filled with Nazis?
No, I just hopped onto it because I heard it was a new platform. So I just made an account and followed some people on it. Because there's this whole, there's even some, and this is what I hate, it's just the guilt by association nonsense with this. It's like, if you're on Parler, you're obviously using it for whatever. And it's like, Ron Paul is on Parler.
Yeah.
The Mises Institute is on Parler. Let's see who else is on Parler.
I mean, all of
right here.
Yeah, most of the
guys.
Congress, Senate.
Tulsi Gabbard is on Parler.
Yeah. Most politicians are on. Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Phil Robertson from the Duck Dynasty. He's on it. Maria Bartiromo. Like all these TV personalities are there. So just because there happen to be some nefarious people on the platform as well, which I don't follow and we have no connection with, I'm suddenly the alt-right white nationalist. Like, how the fuck does that happen?
Let's see here. Yeah, I think they're still probably experiencing a bit of
yeah, I think there's a rush of people who've come back.
Yeah, because like it's taking forever to load anything.
I mean, this was the problem with Gab as well. Like Gab has a team of 5 people, and Torba is, he's a fundamentalist Christian. He's a little bit nuts, but I believe he thinks like when the end time come, he's building Gab to be able to like survive in their theology, the 7-year tribulation. I think.
Oh man.
I think that's his thinking. I don't know if it's true or not, but I think that's his thinking, right? So he's built a very robust network. And when Parler was taken down, everybody ran to Gab. Now, I've always preferred Gab. Gab has a much better interface, much better layout, much more functional. But like what we're experiencing now, when 3 million people suddenly jumped on Gab and him and his 5-team people,
yeah,
they couldn't handle it. But it's come up to speed now.
Basically, tribulation forced Twitter.
Yeah, it is tribulation-proof Twitter. I think I would love to know what he's thinking, and he's brilliant. He's not only designed Gab, which is a Twitter. It's actually like a Facebook as well. You could do all this stuff on it, but he's also built a browser, which does you can't be tracked by Google and Facebook and all of these other things, and he's building a phone that can't be tracked. That is actually, talk about building your own. Like he took it literally. So back in 2016, when he was first deplatformed and we saw the beginnings of this, he really took it as a mission. And I have to give him props for his privacy position and all these other things. So I'm on Gab, as if anybody didn't know. I like Gab. I would love to use Gab exclusively. If I didn't have the podcast to still post on Facebook, I probably wouldn't be on Facebook anymore, to be very honest. Are you on Gab?
I think I am.
You think you are? Yeah.
I'm trying to. I might as well like just reboot a lot of this stuff. I think I had it like way back when it first came out. I just made one.
It's because they're growing for the podcast. We need to be kind of sharing our stuff out there. So like I've been porting the podcast. If anybody is interested, I've been porting it to BitChute because that had a massive explosion of people. I've been porting it to Odyssey. So I've uploaded a couple of the podcast episodes on Odyssey just because people are fleeing Facebook and they're fleeing all of these different places. So just trying to reach as many people as possible. You jump on these new platforms when it's early, and we try and get a following as quick as we can. That's kind of a dig at our audience as well, because they're not really helping us promote this stuff, man.
Some of you watch us all the time.
Just $1 a month, guys.
I mean, if all of our subscribers on YouTube support us at $1 a month,
yes, that would make a massive difference in the show, and it would keep it going. It would definitely sustain things going forward.
Yeah.
Or even if they just share it, get it out there, get the numbers up for the downloads of the podcast on any major podcasting platform. Yeah, we might get some good sponsorship deals, man. We could do like the Love Gun, the rotating dildo. Celestina, we could get some love dolls and maybe get some real sponsorship.
If we start making money off love dolls, I don't even know what we're gonna do.
But yeah, we do appreciate everybody coming out and listening to the show and stuff. But we are gonna start making it a point to, hey, subscribe, leave a comment, add us to your download list, because we've been doing this for how long, Amos?
Almost 4 years.
Almost 4 years. And let's just be honest, we're not where we really wanted to be.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm literally logging into Gab right now.
You're logging into Gab. You're logging into Gab.
Oh, so I did. Okay, I had one follower.
Oh, cool. Was
Two
it
followers.
Me?
No,
I thought. No.
it was some bot.
Damn, what an asshole I am.
Some porno thing.
Anybody interested on I'm going to put my link in the chat. Anybody follow me on Gab? I like Gab. Just being very honest. I'm on everything. I'm on the MeWe, Parler, all of these. I don't really do anything on them, but I would like to make Gab my major thing. So anybody looking for me there, I'm Brook_Potter. No E in the Brook. So it's Brook_Potter on Gab. So link me up on Gab, guys.
Yeah, it looks pretty good in general.
Oh, Brian just followed me. God, you got a shout out for that, Brian. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Anyways,
what's your handle on Gab? I'll follow you quick.
It's just the same thing as on Twitter, Amos Joe.
Amos Joe, one word?
Yeah.
I got you. There. You got 3 followers now. Do I get a shout out?
Do you get a shout out? You're on the fucking show, man.
Awesome. Awesome.
But yeah. So we're coming up on our time.
Wow.
Anything you want to quickly touch on?
I think we hit all of the big stuff. Yeah, it's been, I mean, it's kind of been a slow week, wouldn't you say? It's been a slow
little bit.
Yeah, there's not, I mean, yeah. The impeachment ended kind of like a fart rather than a bang. So yeah, I think we're good. I would say let people watch the show from Daily Wire. So the run hide fight. And I'd love to hear some feedback because, you know, as Americans, I know it's really made for your audience. Me watching it from not coming from that, I would love to hear some feedback on that. So that's the only thing I'd kind of throw in there.
Cool. All right. So, of course, as we said at the beginning, wash your balls. But if you want to support the show, check out tacticalsoap.com. Use coupon code 10K Rum to get 10% off on your order. And also check out subscribestar.com/shitlord-preachers if you want to support the show for as little as $1 a month. Subscribe to the channel, subscribe to us on all podcasting platforms, leave a like, leave a comment, follow us on social media, all of the above. So we want to thank everyone for joining us. Of course, we are of course back on we're staying with our schedule with Tuesdays, 11 o'clock Central Time, or 5 o'clock GMT.
Yes, 5 p.m. GMT.
Yeah. So we will of course be on next week. And we thank everyone for joining us.
Thanks for watching, everyone.